Ridiculous.
Ridiculous, but I bet it was for a significant amount of money.
Still ridiculous.
Yeah, but fun. I'd watch it. Look, Jake Paul wants to test himself against actual, not just world champion, but one of the greatest of all time.
Really fought, and it wasn't fixed. Jake Paul would not survive 45 seconds.
I don't know about that. I think it would take a few rounds.
Really?
But yeah. First of all, Jake is a lot bigger. Jake's a lot bigger.
But what weight would they fight?
Well,
it's not about the number. If it was about the number, we could have started up. I would have tell you, I'm not just interested. It makes no sense for me. It's not my what I'm looking.
Joe Rogan was shocked when he heard that Jake Paul had offered Francis Ngannou the chance to be his next opponent after his fight with Gervonta Davis got canceled. On his podcast, Rogan called the idea crazy and almost reckless for Jake, who started as a YouTuber before becoming a boxer. Rogan said Francis, a former UFC fighter turned boxing powerhouse, is one of the most dangerous punchers in combat sports. He questioned whether Jake really understood what he was getting himself into. Still, Rogan admitted that if the fight actually happened, it would be a massive spectacle.
Nikista calls Francis. This is Francis telling the story. Nikista calls Francis and says, hey, we need your help. We need an opponent for Jake. Tank is out. And Francis says, all right. And Francis says, well, how can I help you? And Nikista says, well, we're looking at an opponent for Jake. Tank Davis is out. And Francis says, all right, but specifically, how can I help you? Nikista takes a third swing at the bat. He says, well, we need an opponent. We need a boxer. We need a partner. We need somebody to fight Jake. Tank is out. And Francis asks him again, okay, what?
When Jake Paul's exhibition fight with Gervonta Davis fell through because of serious legal issues surrounding Davis, Paul and his team quickly started looking for a replacement. One of the names that came up was Francis Ngannou, the former UFC heavyweight champion who became a crossover boxer. His size, power, and popularity make him one of the most dangerous men in striking sports.
Saga, I think the fight is going to be completely canceled and rescheduled, and now we have potential opponent names and some people being ruled out coming into today. This is not a joke. It was said by Mike Coppinger and others that the #1 candidate to replace Tank Davis in a Jake Paul fight, probably on a different date, was going to be Francis Ngannou. What the f? But we have an update on that and other potential names that Jake could fight. Again, I think on a separate date, and why I think the Jake and Tank fight is completely off. No more, maybe, no more. We don't think it'll happen.
Bisping talked about the huge size difference in the rumored fight between Jake Paul and Francis Ngannou. He reminded everyone that Jake was first supposed to fight Gervonta Davis, who was a much smaller lightweight. Bisping said that moving from Davis to Ngannou means Jake would be facing someone completely different in size and challenge. He explained that going from fighting a smaller man to someone with Ngannou's size and power creates a mismatch not just in skill or record, but also in pure strength, reach, and danger.
Mike Tyson, who's 58, Anderson Silva, who was way past his prime, people like Nate Diaz, who were way smaller. Gervonta Davis really did take the piss. I mean, that was just the craziest shout ever. To go from fighting Gervonta Davis, way smaller, to now boxing Francis Ngannou. I mean, listen, if he does it, fair play. But I just call #1 bullshit on this brother, because I don't see this happening. No.
This is #1 bullshit.
I just don't believe it. I don't believe it at all. Nate Diaz, yeah, 100%. I mean, he beat him once already. I'm sure Nate Diaz would love to get another big payday, because obviously boxing on Netflix and going up against Jake Paul, given his success, given the name that he has, and given the magnitude of his events, Nate Diaz will get paid an absolute fortune once again. We know that it wasn't too long ago Jake Paul was talking about boxing Anthony Joshua, and that never came to fruition. There's absolutely no way he would box Anthony Joshua. If he did, if he was to do something like that, whether it be Anthony Joshua or Francis Ngannou, I'd give him his props, I'd give him his credit. And you never know, maybe he would do it just for the clout, because in many ways it would be, sorry about the airport notifications, it would be, an admirable thing to do. And it will be Jake Paul taking on somebody bigger.
According to Francis Ngannou, the call from Jake Paul's team about replacing Gervonta Davis came out of nowhere. He said the offer arrived suddenly and didn't match his current goals. Although money was mentioned, Ngannou turned it down, saying the terms and timing made no sense for him. He questioned how going from Davis to him could be seen as a logical move. Ngannou made it clear that for him, this was not about a payday. It was about whether the fight made professional sense.
Jake to replace Gervonta, I'm like, who's Jake? I was so confused, I wasn't expecting that at all. And he said, yeah, Jake Paul, he's fighting. And I'm like, no, bro, come on. Don't disrespect me like that. And then they even say they even come out after and say, and what if the number are good? He sent out some number. I'm like, it's not about the number. If it was about the number, we could have started talk. I would have tell you, I'm not just interested. He make no sense for me. It's not my.
Former UFC champion Daniel Cormier gave a direct warning to Jake Paul about what could happen if he faces Francis Ngannou. Cormier talked about Ngannou's devastating power and the clear mismatch in experience and physical strength. He said Jake isn't ready to deal with a heavyweight striker who comes from a mixed martial arts background. Cormier made it clear that this kind of fight could have serious consequences for Jake. He said, "This isn't just about money or spectacle. The risk outweighs the reward."
Paul goes from fighting Gervonta Davis to calling out Francis Ngannou. Jake Paul don't want those problems. I can't say it any different. Jake Paul does not want any Francis Ngannou problems. He don't. He does not want those issues. While I think it's crazy and I credit him for doing that, and I'm surprised he did that, this could be a ploy. Him poking out his chest, saying, I want Francis. He don't want those Francis Ngannou problems. I don't care what Anthony Joshua did to Francis Ngannou. Jake Paul gets in there with Francis. Francis will knock his head off this planet. You don't want those Francis problems. I watched Francis put down Tyson Fury. Sure, Anthony Joshua beat him. But even if Jake got power, I don't think he got power to be dealing with Francis. Because all it takes is for one.
Cormier also questioned Jake's motives, suggesting that this might be more about publicity than real competition. He said Jake is underestimating what it means to fight a true heavyweight who can punch through gloves. Cormier added that while Ngannou's power in MMA is already legendary, in boxing it becomes even more dangerous because of how focused it is. He warned that if Jake steps into the ring with Francis without truly understanding the difference between MMA striking and boxing defense, it could be a very short night for him.
Boxing is much different than mixed martial arts. The target audience might be the same, but the demographics different. The places where people are brought up are different. There's bigger entourages in boxing. It's just a different world in boxing. We've known that from the very beginning. We know that Gervonta Davis was not going to just play to Jake Paul's rules. I still don't know exactly why this thing is falling apart, but it is falling apart bad. It is bursting at the seams. We are almost exactly where we should have never started. This should have never gotten started, but it did. But we are almost now exactly where we need to be in the fight, and that's it.
Several fight analysts have called Jake Paul's proposal to face Francis Ngannou on such short notice a dangerous and risky move for both Paul and the overall fight story. They pointed out that after Gervonta Davis pulled out late, Jake's team quickly approached Ngannou as a replacement. But as Ngannou himself said, taking the fight this late made no sense for his career. From a strategy point of view, it also means Jake wouldn't have enough time to prepare for a heavyweight like Ngannou, who has elite power and experience. Many analysts compared the potential Paul versus Ngannou fight to the real match between Tyson Fury and Ngannou. They said both situations are similar because of their crossover appeal, mismatched styles, and the focus on spectacle rather than pure boxing skill. Just like Fury faced a former MMA champion in Ngannou and ended up struggling more than expected, a Paul versus Ngannou fight would likely follow the same pattern, a social media boxer stepping up to face a huge, powerful athlete. Even Fury, the heavyweight champion, admitted that Ngannou gave him one of the toughest fights of his entire decade.
About this is, okay, if they push it back to December, then that's slightly different. But this is the kind of one situation where you're kind of 10 days out, 2 weeks out from a fight, whenever they first got wind of this problem. This is the kind of situation where it would be possible that Jake Paul and Nikita Badarian and MVP, who are very, very shrewd people, this is the one occasion where they might end up making a mistake, taking someone at short notice who they shouldn't take. Because there'd be a whole raft of people putting their hand up for it, wouldn't they? Thinking, I'll take him at short notice. I'll make out that I've been sitting on a beach, eating and drinking for the last 6 months. But anything just to get in there with him. And then on the night, I'm gonna knock his head off. There'll be loads of people putting their hand up for this. And you'd have to be incredibly careful about who you took at short notice, because for it to have any kind of meaning, you would need to take a decent opponent at short notice, because obviously they're up against it because it's short notice. You couldn't take some barely warm body at short notice, because that would be even worse than giving them full notice. So this is the one area, the one situation in which it would be easy for them to make a mistake, but they don't make mistakes with things like this. They just don't. So yeah, I'm not surprised that they haven't been tempted into, somebody. Yeah, Ngannou, that'd be a mistake. It'd be such a mistake. I know he got flattened by Joshua, but so what? Joshua is a 2-time unified champion of the world, and Ngannou's 270 pounds of absolute granite. That would have been a terrible, terrible mistake if they'd given him the fight.
And he dropped, like, people. I know, my opinion, Tyson Fury won that fight with Ngannou, but he still put Tyson Fury.
He was close.